the background noise of modern life, right? Like, and I use noise specifically. I think noise, well, despite how it has been used for older generations to characterize and label the music of younger generations, there's something about noise that, unless we can find music in it, is almost like, I'm just coming up with this for the first time. So I'm not really like, I'm not, planting my rod in the ground on this statement, but it's almost like the opposite of music in a way. We might find music in it, but noise doesn't have that thing to it. It feels like there's a background noise to life in the modern world, which is all of the crises that we kind of mentioned earlier, and the stuff that, interpenetrated your documentary, like these things that are happening in the world, the music, the mushrooms, they're happening in the context of this background noise, which for myself, it rises and falls in perceived intensity, but it kind of exists as an ongoing kind of hum, maybe of dread, and at its like sort of most neutral, it's something like a low level dread that's almost just like an itch that sometimes is really bothersome that I can't seem to scratch, and other times I've just kind of learned to accept that it's there. It can take other emotional themes and such, but I guess like I'm trying to lean towards like, when we talk about music, ceremony, connections, love, like all of these things happen in context, and the context of the human species right now, and thus all of the ceremonies, all of the deep listening experiences, all the moving encounters that happen with your music or music of similar, like consequence for people, is happening in the background of our world state. What do you see? Like, do you see that as well? Or is there another way that you would characterize it? Or do you see something totally different that's happening in the world right now? And on top of that, I want to add two questions. So, what do you see as happening in the world right now? And the two questions on top of that is like, well, what is the value of music now? What is the value of psychedelic experiences now?
Well, it's a lot there. Maybe in reverse, the role of the psychedelic experience now is to help people wake the fuck up so that they can make the changes that are necessary to make in their own lives that plays a critical way in the way positive change happens in this world. It happens a person at a time. That's how change happens. It's not just an idea out there that comes from the top down. So there's a calling out there for each of us to participate from the inside out into action in the world. Now, we have to be careful not to get stuck into the self-aggrandized delusionistic state where it just turns into like an Instagram thing, like you said, where people reaching out to you, it's like, now you can make more money and get more followers. Like, that's a dead end where you're getting stuck in. It's a very difficult conundrum that we face, because on one hand, like plants coming through cracks in the concrete, it's inevitable and it's happening. Like, the concrete is old, it is breaking apart. That in a sense is inevitable. We're just propping things up over and over and over again. Going back to 2008, just a very recent thing of when I was referencing when the financial crisis occurred, not much has changed in the back end of banking laws and systems. No one really went to jail for that. So we're still in like that same situation. And then, we have environmental. I think about how we're about to get into wildfire season here. I live in the West, and it's like, it's terrible. The smoke in the summers. I didn't have them when I was growing up. Maybe once a summer that might happen. That's now the way it is. I mean, I don't have to go through all the crises from, I won't even go through it. It's a poly crisis. And I think we're all aware of a lot of them. And you throw AI and information on top of all of this, and then it's a whole another level.
Sure. And the collapsing of sort of like cultural structures of meaning as all of that just goes into the blender
truth.
of.
Yeah, there's not even a collective truth. truth anymore. I mean, it's truly on many ways it's in essence is like it's breaking down right in front of our face in a way that is apocalyptic, that it makes sense in a strange way. It's like, well, if it's going to break down so that something else can take its place, that's happening, right? Like, and I think a lot of things do need to change and break down. I mean, there's been many systems that just weren't working and were deeply oppressive and based on all sorts of oppression in the first place. And we couldn't continue in that story in that way. That was very much a story of like, everything's cool. We'll just keep growing. Don't worry about it. We'll just get more debt, whatever it is. We'll invent our way out of it. They, quote unquote, will figure it out. That's not working anymore. And then you throw in sort of the deeply destructive Kali-like figure that is Donald Trump. I mean, my God, we could talk hours just about what's going on there on any different level, but in a strange way, like seems to be playing a role of like just burning it down, which I don't want. But then there's this other feeling in you like, but I also don't want us to just like, well, if you could snap your fingers and it was like, we're literally like where we were, whatever, even 10 years ago. And it's just like that. We'll just keep on. It's like, well, we know that was a dead end too. It's just maybe would buy us more time and it felt peaceful. I am no way a supporter of what Trump is doing. I think it's callous and disgusting and cruel and stupid most of the time. So I mean, if anything, I want change and I want it in the way of the least suffering. But I also know in human nature, we typically only change when we're forced to. It's usually a near-death experience, a bankruptcy,
A divorce.
and all of that's
Sure. Yeah.
happening,
Yeah.
collectively in our
Right.
society. If you think about it, right, we're about to go bankrupt, and we're kind of going through a divorce on cultural levels, and then social media, I've talked for a long time about how the role of the iPhone and what it's done to our minds. And I think it's played a big role in our polarization and the way we pull in information and how that's really changed our brains and the tribalism we're experiencing on many levels. Like many people, for instance, these days have platforms that should not have platforms, but they have them because of the mechanisms of how we're amplifying attention and grabbing it. And it becomes like a Ouroboros where the most outrageous, ridiculous things grow, even though they're not.
That doesn't even speak to just, Marshall McLuhan, a sort of famous Canadian thinker. Terence McKenna used to talk about him a lot. He would say like the medium is the message. There's a whole other level of how the medium of checking our phones and social media and stuff, like the very structure of attention that it sort of catalyzes and requests becomes the quality and patterns of attention with which we show up to our entire lives, and thus all of the behaviors that come out of that, which is, like when we talk about deep listening or active listening, it's like the opposite of that. Like, what kind of lives can we live? What kind of relationship can we have with each other and with the world if the sort of the basic functions of awareness are being defined by the patterns of attention that are being engendered in us and neurologically set into our perception that social media and swiping and doom scrolling and 3-second videos, that what it does to us.
Yes. Look, I don't know if you were into the whole 2012 thing. It's sort of at this point almost old school, but like there's this.
I was in. I was all the way.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I
for
was all the
those
way in, man.
super cliff notes, this Mayan calendar, the Baktun, and the idea that we're about on 2012 on the winter solstice, we're switching into this new calendar, this new epoch, essentially, and that is true according to that calendar. We are, and so people expected a big change at that moment. And I think looking back, of course, the change would be generational. Like, right? It would not just be one day. It's like that just marked when now you're heading in a, it's an in-breath, out-breath kind of thing. That was also around when the internet really started to take off as far as mobile speeds being fast enough where things like TikToks or videos, I mean, whatever was going on back then, became more viable and we got much more like mobile focused and our attention became much more fragmented into smartphones. So in many ways, and everything else that's kind of happened since then, politically and socially and environmentally, it does seem like, I mean, look to me, look at it, it's like, yeah, it seems like we're absolutely in some new era. And as time wave zero, as McKenna would say, that we are moving towards some kind of concrescence. It's just AI alone, we can say there's this supposed AGI thing. We're moving towards it. What all that means, we don't quite know. I mean, it's a very, very psychedelic concept to even think that we're getting closer and closer and speeding faster and faster. But I'm like, is there a point? Or is it just like you zoom in on that and from your point of perspective, like a spiral, it's just like, you know, like we're moving in light speed on this earth almost, but here we are standing in stillness, you know? So my point is something is coming. And I also sense, like you, this tidal wave rumbling in the distance, and almost like the alarms have sounded. Oh, there was an earthquake across the Pacific. The tidal wave's coming. We're like, well, the beach is pretty nice right now. I mean, but you tell me it's coming. I can feel it coming in the polycrises, just in AI alone, let alone in this, we're recording this, you know, not long after the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. It's like just that feels like a fire in the house where it's like all these other things going on, all these philosophical ideas we're talking about. And it's like, you got to put the fire out. I mean, it's just right next to us in a sense. Like, and this is our home and we don't have that. We don't have the luxury. We have to do something about some of these fires. And yet there's multiple fires being lit all around us. And it's just challenging. I think it's very intentional. It's challenging to know what to do or where to start or what would even, we get caught up in this game of distraction where we're talking and fighting about the things that it's just like, it's taking us away from the other thing and then the other thing and then the other thing and then the other thing. And I do believe there is a systematic dismantling happening that is not just random. I mean, yeah, it's attached to greed and stupidity on a lot of levels, but there seems to be additional layers to it where, for lack of a better description, like the American experiment is trying to be completely torn apart, perhaps, so corporate billionaires and others can take it over, maybe. I mean, I can't say exactly what's going on, but we can all have some guesses. And say what you want about the problems of America, and there are many, and the colonialistic energies and efforts that created it and all the horrible things that made it what it is. It also has served a purpose, at least since World War II, certainly, as a kind of beacon on the hill in ideology for what democracy at least could be as a theory.
Right.
Or even as this really fucked up police thing in the planet that played a role, if ugly. Look, it's coming apart. It's like, so that post World War II era is changing. And so what that means or what that world looks like, we don't know, but I think it's going to be very, very, continue to be even more rocky. And you add on the layers like the storms and the fires and the energy and the wars. I mean, really, really difficult. Like coronaviruses. I mean, we're in for much, much more. Mm-hmm. So what role do psychedelics play in this? You're asking.
Yeah, I was going to say, because like, you know, projections of where we're headed and what it all means and so forth aside, like the reality is that the living experience of most people today right now.
Yeah, well, it's important for us not, these days, I feel like if we don't bring to the surface what's on the surface, at some point in the conversation, we're doing a disservice to the state of play. It's kind of like, you know, just two guys talking about metaphysics. It's like we have to ground it because fires are burning. And so the psychedelics are truly can be a medicine potentially for people to reconnect in ways to those parts of themselves, to remember what's really important, what those North Stars are, and help hopefully give them motivation to take those courageous and brave steps into the world, to say what they need to say, to join forces with people and be more cooperative, to understand like even the othering is an illusion. I don't like, I don't want someone like Trump or whoever else, to die or to be like tortured. That's not my desire. I just don't want us to be hurting each other. It's not about hate. It's just about waking up to like true long-term thinking beyond a generation of like ourselves and like this week or this year or this quarter, but really like 7 generations from now, that kind of thinking, like beyond yourself. What kind of world do you want to live? And we live in a world where people are like, they don't care. They're like, well, I want to know like what I can get out of this or what my future looks like. And I mean, you could look at it that way and say like, well, the best way to do that is together. I mean, that would be your best future, especially now. And so I'm hoping psychedelics, in a sense, can wake people up to love and to connection to other people. And then they can make changes and be bold and have that bravery to take those steps in their life, because we're going to need people who know what it means to have their feet on the ground moving forward, who are not just freaking out and reacting and being just completely triggered all the time. And we need people who can then have the leadership, or at least take turns doing it, because you can't do it all the time, to say like such and such is possible. We can do this. Yes, I'm willing to be in solidarity with something that might seem very hard or even impossible, incredibly nascent, but I'm going to play a participatory role in helping the becoming become, because it's the only way it can happen. And there will be more and more and more noise, more distraction, and more fires burning around us. And I do think it is a deep and important and valuable skill, and an admirable, difficult skill, to be able to have your feet on the ground and be clear-eyed at times when all of that is happening. So it's like if you can practice that now, and psychedelics is one way you can potentially drop into some of these things and really feel them and okay. But then it has to go away. You come down from the high and you're back here on campus Earth. We're supposed to be here. This is the point. We're supposed to be human facing things. And so everyone that's alive today feels like a brave soul to me, because let's just take on the idea that we chose to be here at this time. So if you chose to be here just as a thought experiment, then you must be a pretty brave person, because you're like, yeah, I want to be part of the ultimate show in the universe, potentially. This is it. This is like, we're at the crux. And are we going to make it? Are we going to thread the needle? But the last thing I'll say on this is like, if you were to design this situation, like you're quote unquote God, and you're like, this is how it is going to happen. Why wouldn't you make it the most suspenseful, crazy, multi-layered, multifaceted, like of everything going on at once, where maybe we eke out the last bit like Luke Skywalker kind of thing? I mean, that's how you would do it, because that's the most novel and beautiful. So in that way, there's hope, but it requires your participation.
I want to, just 45 seconds ago, you said something to the effect of, like the noise is going to get louder and louder, and like going into the psychedelic experience and sort of like being inspired, getting back into connection and coming back with your feet on the ground. And I'm thinking back to you saying like, we're all musicians. Like we can all sing, and there's also a dance in how we listen. And I'm kind of like bridging this together, which is like the noise is going to get louder and louder. And, like the value is to make music there. And I mean that in the most figurative way possible, but also literally to make the music of how we dance with each other, how we meet each other in our feelings, both positive and negative, how we collaborate to build something beautiful that is a beauty other people can be affected by and step into. And that, psychedelics maybe can help us sort of have a sense of what that could look like, or at the very least give us a capacity to touch it within ourselves, such that we could then later learn to cultivate those feelings in our actions and behaviors in ourselves, such that our actions and behaviors can be expressions of those things, and maybe find and create resonance in those feelings with others as well. Also possible delusion and self-aggrandizement.
Well, no, I think they absolutely can. They have that potential. And we also know that they have for millennia. So, I mean, they play an important part in humans figuring out how to be human and to work through things. We know that. So just that's happened for so long, and really only in recent history here, it'd be pretty silly to think like, oh, well, it's not relevant now. You know, of course it is. It's just a tool. But weaving the integrity of that tool, it makes sense to learn from how they've been used in smart and effective ways in the past, or way, way, way long past, that are so they don't get caught up in sort of the trappings and the tricks of modernity and technologies and ways. Not say it's just it's a difficult weaving, and it takes nuance.